Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Boring Enterprise Nerdcast, or I guess Nerdletter pregame show, maybe you want to
Yeah,
call it. I don't know, where
yeah,
we talk about um, the things that we're planning to write about. And sometimes we talk about more than the things we're planning to write about, or sometimes we talk about things that we think we might write about and then we don't write about. So an amazing collaborative mess of whatever. Um, this time around it's my turn to go first, so I will show off and talk about some of the things that I'm planning to write about for our next newsletter issue. So I'll share my screen. I've
sweet.
got
And,
some
while you do that, we
some
should say
articles
we
loaded
are
up.
joined by Edgar Martinez today. So it's our first
Oh
ever
yeah,
live event when we invited anyone to join us over Zoom. So Edgar or anyone might join us as we are recording. So welcome everyone, and we're glad to have you with us. And yeah, please enjoy. Yeah, go ahead, Paul. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks, Elena. So first up for me is, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this piece flying around or something
Yep.
similar. Is that the SAP's heartland, SAP's home base in Germany has a fiery, passionate user base there, and they have a lot to say about cloud and Rise. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
and not all of it is happy, positive, fun unicorn vibes, right? So this is something I've been kind of puzzling over myself for the last couple years or whatever. Is like, under the covers, what's the real sentiment out there in the world in terms of Rise, in terms of public cloud versus hybrid versus on-prem, in terms of the choices that companies have made, especially a lot of the large companies that have older implementations have so many millions of dollars sunk into their customizations, um, that I think even though they're being offered a chance to preserve some of those things, they're starting to still feel a little bit left behind, I think. And so there's some growing sentiment out there about that stuff. And I mean, what better source than Germany to go find that out, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll be writing about that, but I did want to note too that uh, over at Diginomica, John Reed also has a take on this, and so I might be borrowing from John's take, or I'll review John's take too, because I really enjoy, first of all, enjoy reading his takes, but second of all, he usually gives me some good food for thought above and beyond sort of just the here's the news, see you later, right? So um John just published this today actually.
Oh, wow.
So I'm gonna kind of enhance my stuff, some of John's thoughts here too. The I just think it's the universe is so weird, and I was gonna say weird and wonderful, but I think just weird is probably enough for like SAP versus other stuff in the software world, right?
Mm.
And so the sentiment here really is, I think, probably unique to the SAP world, or at least very nearly so, because everywhere else you look, people don't even bat an eye at cloud stuff, right? If you look at Dynamics or something like that,
Hmm.
nobody cares that it's cloud first, cloud only these days, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a different universe out there for SAP stuff. So that's
Yeah.
my first thing, is those, probably a fusion of those two bits there. Um,
Yeah, this article made
I
quite
know
a quite
people
a
are,
splash. Yeah, sorry. So I'm glad
yeah,
that you are taking
yeah,
taking that on. So yeah, nice.
yeah. I actually kind of wondered if you had it in your list too,
No, no,
in
no.
which case there would
I was
be.
wondering the same about you, but I'm glad I hedged my bets on something else. Sweet. So,
So but I did the same thing too. I came up with 4 or 5 different ones just in case, right?
sweet.
So there's that. The second one is, I know everyone, I'm sure everyone is just sick of me writing about GPT, chat
Not
GPT, whatever, but
again. Paul.
I'm doing it again. I said I would take a break, and then now I'm done with my break, because this stuff, like, here's the thing, is that I was on site with a customer this week, and I did a presentation about this stuff. And like, if you're somebody who's just like deeply, deeply passionate and deeply like, I don't even know, I'm just a super nerd for this stuff. When I put together a slide deck, And I talk about this in terms of some of the features of like Microsoft Copilot or stuff that Microsoft is doing in this space with this tech. People's eyes just go wide and they go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that things could do this. So I think out there in the universe, there is a huge segment of people that, well, first of all, don't see it the way I do, which is fine. I'm not like saying I'm the smartest guy in the room for this, but who also maybe are like, because I think it's, I'm going to get on a soapbox here just for a second. I think it's totally, there are at least two classes of takes, probably more, but at least two. One take of this is, hey, it's interesting, but it's not really going to change the world. And the other class of take is, hey, this is really interesting, and yeah, it's going to change the world, right? And there's, of course, nuance in all of those takes for that stuff. But what I think has happened is a lot of people have developed an opinion somewhere between those two things, but they haven't really talked with a lot of other folks or dove deep on the subject itself. And when they dive deep, their opinions change. And I think that changes both ways, right? I'm not saying that if you dive deep, you'll be convinced like me that everyone is going to be robots in 2 years and we're all going to swim underwater and fly to space, right? That's not really what I believe anyway either. But like learning about this stuff is something that opens people's eyes. And this particular discussion here is between different generations of people. And so I talked to a couple people who were older than me in a different generation, and a couple people who were younger than me also in a different generation. And I can see both of those pathways, both the it's going to change the world and kind of shrug. Both of those paths are at work in both the older and younger people than me stuff, right? In other words, it's like the whole world is kind of like, do I shrug or do I look at this hard, right? And so I am fascinated with that discussion of should I shrug or should I think about this really hard? And so this is a recording of a discussion like that, and I'm going to capture some thoughts here about material this time around. So next story up for me is there is some action and activity around speeding up performance for certain things in UI5 lately. And I think that's a very positive thing from the UI5 standpoint, because again, going around to different customers and having different conversations, I definitely see people, this is one of the things people complain about with UI5, is its performance in comparison to other web frameworks and other web technologies. People, whether true or not, people have developed an opinion that it's very poor. And UI5, or excuse me, SAP taking steps to make that better is just, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing from the UI5 world. So I'm going to read more about this and kind of distill some of this down to, hey, what's going on here? What's going on with that?
It's interesting.
And then, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Paul. I read a post on Reddit just the other day. Someone was saying pretty unflattering words about UI5, that it's pretty much like very like old technology that, I mean, does not get much use outside of SAP. I was actually curious about your opinion as a renowned author of literature on this subject. So yeah, it's interesting.
So my opinion on that is, as soon as you step out of the bounds of SAP world, frankly, and I'll just be vulgar this one time, wink, wink, nobody gives a crap about SAP UI5 except SAP people, right? There's that open source version of it, Open UI5, just nobody cares. Nobody cares outside of SAP. And so again, I'm not saying that you should be mean or unpleasant to people about that. I'm just saying that like if you go to web shops around the world, UI5 is not on their radar at all.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes both ways too, for like, if you're a big enterprise who has lots of different technologies inside your doors, so to speak, and you're always kind of hiring and firing and whatever with your sort of web dev people, getting to a world where your SAP data and SAP transactional processes will be under the covers of some other web technology, React, Angular, whatever, is a good place to look at it from the standpoint of availability of talent.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a React developer, right? But like, I bet you there's a radius of miles around me where nobody knows UI5. Just like, it's just that rare in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it has that, I guess, I don't know how I want to put it, marketplace lack of success, maybe you want to put it that way, where in the broader marketplace of adoption, it doesn't have much. It's SAP teams that are using it.
Yeah,
so,
and that also I guess creates concerns for developers who use it, who chose it as their kind of vocation. That, I mean, if I learn that, is that essentially that skill outside of very narrow ecosystem. So yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's I wish I had something better to say about that too, but yeah. If you want to be somebody who can make good stories about business data and make them happen quickly, UI5 might be a good choice because that's sort of baked into SAP, right? But if you're somebody who wants to be like, I want to be a developer, I want to be a software author, right? SAP UI5 is probably not the choice for you from that perspective. I mean, and that's kind of the same thing with like, think about ABAP versus C#.
Yeah, exactly.
Same deal, right?
Yep.
If you want to make stuff happen in business apps, ABAP all the way, man. That'll crush. You will crush stuff. But if you want to be like, if your ambition is like, I want to make software, whatever the shape it may take, something like .NET or whatever is a better choice for that.
Yeah, still, I think, no disrespect to UI5, I bet ABAP is more popular still than UI5 probably.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
just purely volume wise, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could actually, honestly, you could say, like, UI5 only exists because ABAP exists, right? There's no other way around of that.
Yeah.
So I'm just to be, I don't know, a jerk about it, but that's just true. Like, there's always going to be more ABAPers.
Yeah.
There's always going to be probably more use for them too. So
yeah, that's true.
The other thing, so speaking of ABAP, or speaking of UI5 and ABAP things, yeah, I know that Yelena, you and what's his name, Paul Hardy, you guys always are ragging on people who post blogs about Excel and ABAP. Well, here is Excel and UI5, right? So I'll take a look at this, and again, so like I said, I have 4 or 5. I'll have to distill 1 or 2 of these down or wait for later. But I wanted to sort of give a shout out to folks who are tackling that Excel problem in some other dimension, right? Because I mean, there's probably an argument to be made somewhere that that like Excel is the interface to all data anyway, right? Like, because if you think about how many different apps start their life as Excel spreadsheets, and how many different apps export their data to Excel spreadsheets, like Excel is the actual interface to everything, right? So like, if your language or framework has an Excel shaped hole in it, you've done good. If your language doesn't have an Excel library or an Excel whatever, you've got work to do, because somebody somewhere will want to use Excel with your language, so
it's funny.
That's my final piece there.
Yeah, we even do like page mockups in Excel, then we later deliver in UI5 or React or whatever.
I mean,
it's funny.
It's the ultimate all-purpose software tool for sure.
Awesome.
So that's my stuff. I'll stop sharing And Yelena, I will
And
hand over the mic to you.
yeah.
And by the way, while Yelena is doing that, we have a couple of other participants who've come on. So Tatiana and Venkat, thanks for stopping in, guys. It's great to see you.
And if everyone,
I think you can say hi if you want.
yeah, if you would like to, you're on the record right now.
But you can just
Edgar,
listen in too. That's yeah.
yeah, either way is fine. Edgar and others, if you
Yeah.
would like to, if you have some opinion on Paul's stories, please feel free to jump in at any time.
Yep.
All right.
Or you can just listen in and watch us be dorks all by ourselves.
Yeah, so definitely, I think Paul really touched some very interesting points as usual, and based on my personal experience, right? Maybe I can start real quick. UI5, being a developer myself, right? I've always thought that the UI5, or rather the Fiori design guidelines, right? That's really valuable stuff in you know, like the way that these floor plans and everything is laid out. I think it really makes sense, and it really helps represent the data and work with it. It's just that the UI5 framework as such, at least when it came to be, it might be using this jQuery technology, right? And it started there when pretty much everyone else was leaving that space already, right? So, so maybe some of the effects that we are seeing have to do with that. But for example, I've been coding with React and some other technologies, and I would say that if I got a chance to use the Fiori design guidelines, you know, aside from the React components, I mean, like actually use it for other projects, then that would be my pick, right? Because mainly for enterprise projects, I think that's definitely worth it. I like it, the way it looks and everything. It's just like the underlying technology by itself is, you know, like lacking a little bit. And I understand why we want to speed up the rendering and make it faster, because there are other frameworks out there that are already doing that, right? So, I mean, personally,
that's a very fair point. I'm totally in agreement with you on that. The Fiori design, the design guidelines, those are great documents. Those are great principles, and UI5 looks great. So all very well said. Yeah.
Yes, and I have another point regarding this ChatGPT. I'm also passionate about it.
Yes,
because you get to see everything.
Don't encourage him.
It would be hard to avoid that because it's really exciting. At least personally, once again, yes. So something that happened to me is like I'm talking about it all the time, and you know, like trying to encourage people to use it. But something interesting was that I was having dinner with some friends, and one of them was a technical guy like us, and the other person was not, right? So I was trying to explain, like, you go here, you go there, and then you can try things like this. And at that time, she was saying like, okay, yeah, I think this is cool, but most probably not for me, you know, because we had like this technical barrier that normally seems to be there when we are talking about technical stuff or new technologies, right? And then a few days after, we were, you know, like driving home, and they were with us. And then I started asking her like, what would you like to know about what you normally do, right? What would be like the things that you would like to understand better or discover? And then she was talking about selling jewelry, because that's something that that she does. And then I asked her like, okay, so please just ask me, and I will ask the chat, right? and then by the time I was, you know, like reading loud the things that were there in the chat, her eyes also kind of brightened up, like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, right? Because she was really, you know, like figuring out the meaning of that. So my point is, I believe at this moment, we are like involved with technology and we are working on it, and then it's more natural for us to interact with ChatGPT, for example. But eventually, as more interfaces develop, as more the UI progresses, etc., and it's like closer to the user, I believe they would start using it more and more, and would really discover the value behind it. So I'm on the side of all of these technologies actually changing the world very soon.
Yeah. Yelena, I will shut my mouth and let you talk, because the only thing I'll say is I could talk about this for hours and I can't let myself get wrapped up. So I'm shutting my mouth about this. And Edgar, yeah, we could talk later about this. For sure.
Sweet.
That's all. Shutting my mouth.
You
Shutting my
guys
mouth.
can talk about your chat GPTs after that. All right. So my 3 stories that have nothing to do with ChatGPT or AI. So my first story will be maybe not unusual subject for me, but maybe one might look at it and think like, why does it need to be written about? But it's something that I kind of stumbling upon in my professional life and on just in the universe out there. So in the year 2023, how does one actually start learning ABAP? And I had several little kind of seeds that get planted in my mind over the last couple of weeks to think about it. So one of them was this post on Reddit where the person is asking genuine and very good question. I would like to start practicing ABAP, and they already found some information. It looks like they stumbled upon that a downloadable version of ABAP trial that does require pretty big laptop setup. So they obviously confused about that, etc. We also had a group of new developers who just graduated from universities in India who are just joining our company and are being trained. So I got a chance to talk to them about ABAP. Obviously, they do have advantage of joining companies that uses SAP. We can provide SAP and ABAP system for them. But for someone who is just trying to join SAP ecosystem, who just trying to learn ABAP as a programming language, I think it's a pretty big challenge. And there is a variety of reasons. One of them, purely getting access to the environment, which is now super confusing. What does person really do? It seems like there are so many options, but at the same time, no options either. Also, on top of that, there are so many things going on in ABAP. There is classic ABAP that one, I think, needs to learn still. There is also ABAP Rep, there is ABAP in cloud. And if someone just entering at this time in the timeline, I would be super confused. I had like head start on all this information. And even then, I'm confused sometimes. Imagine how a person feels when they just try to, I'm just trying to learn ABAP here. And there is just so much confusion. Yeah.
This is something that I talk about at my company too, with our SAP team, because and Yelena, Edgar, I'm sure you've seen in the marketplace the same thing. Like the younger folks, they're not getting into SAP stuff really all that much. And like that's a problem, you know? Yeah. And if I was SAP, please listen to me. I'm very important in the universe. Please listen to me, SAP. Like, it should be your number one goal as far as adoption goes. Make it easy to learn the things you need to learn to work with this stuff. And that includes make it easy to have an ABAP environment, have an ABAP learning path, all that stuff. It should be crazy easy to do this.
Yeah.
This question should not exist on the internet. Right? If you solve for the larger answer of what do I do here, you solve that problem, the talent problem goes away, because people will be able to do the things they need to do to get on there. Right. And obviously it still takes time to become better at whatever. I get it. But like, if you can't even find the on-ramp, how are you supposed to get on the highway?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, I mean, the first thing that a reasonable person would do is just try to look up some information. Obviously, Google results are just total junk these days. I can say that openly. If I, let's say, Google Learn ABAP, even when you get past that stupid sponsored content, it's still okay, training overview, but that is training.sap.com. As we all know, these are all paid courses, which are like 4 figures in US dollars. They're clearly not for the person who have written that Reddit post. The rest are not even SAP domains. There are some of them I don't really know who they are. Udemy, that might be a good course, but again, probably not free. Some videos, like this one is from 2014, so pretty old. And again, as you go like lower and lower, more and more like weirdest and weirdest stuff just pops up. I cannot really vouch for any of those sources, whether they are good for you or not. Then you get eventually to the books, maybe if you're lucky. And if you go to DuckDuckGo, for example, which is still not as polluted as Google, it's slightly better result, but still your top pick there would be training.sap.com. And that's a totally wrong place, I think, to get this information. So I think there is a much bigger piece hiding behind this, just the tip of the iceberg that I can touch in our newsletter, but I hope that I can at least like scratch the tip of the iceberg there and maybe point some people in the right direction at least, and raise some questions that hopefully someone will see. So, all right. So my second piece
Yelena, in this battle, you have my sword.
Sweet.
And my bow and my axe. Yeah, Lord of the Rings meme. There we go.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. So my second subject is again, I'm dipping into vast content of NDC conferences. They're really, really great YouTube videos there.
Nice.
I like this one. I mean, catchy title as usual. Failure is always an option.
Yeah.
And this one talks about. I will have to rewatch it again because there is really so many, I think, pieces in it. I will need to write up my highlights of it, but I think everyone should just watch it in its entirety. So Dylan here talks about all the different times when kind of software had a bad day, as they call it, when some failure happened. And I think what lessons can be learned from it. I think it's I really, needless to say more, just watch it, and I will just add my highlights of it, and that's it pretty much. Really nice video. And my third piece, that's a very interesting starting point. So I just stumbled upon this article. The CIO magazine, it's where we typically find those articles that I usually have to, I don't really usually read them in the first place.
Right.
When I do, I kind of have to pinch myself just to stay awake. So I saw this 7 trends defining the enterprise IT market today. I just read this. I'm already feeling sleepy.
Yeah.
I was slightly inspired, Paul, by your kind of riff on that ERP state of mind, kind of starting with the article and kind of taking that apart. And I thought that it might be like my kind of snarky piece about, who even writes this stuff and who reads this and who are the CIOs who don't actually know this already, because writing this is just, it's grade A, like enterprise nonsense. It's lots of words that are words that mean something, but really doesn't take you enough information. But then as I was scrolling,
sorry.
Here's your favorite subject, by the way. Here we go.
Sorry.
AI takes aim. Here we go. ChatGPT number 2. It's already made it into marketing pieces. So, but then I got it to this point. Edge computing arrives. So I was first like, arrived. Like, I mean, it's arrived like long time ago, fellas. Nice way waking up. So this really kind of chapter, whatever this part of the article talks about, it doesn't really say much again. Like, it's important to vendors explore opportunities. Like, okay, nice. But I think edge computing by itself, I kind of heard about it before. I would say in SAP world, we probably not really super concerned or interested about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting subject that maybe some people might want to just kind of and maybe read a little bit more about it. In a nutshell, I'm sure you probably know at least what it is, but for our viewers and listeners, it's essentially literally what the name says. It's computing on the what they call like on the edges of Internet of Things, on the edges of cloud. So when, let's say, when we try to collect some data from distant places in the vast internet, then obviously network latency and just cost of transmission of data and processing that obviously takes place. So edge computing is about doing some of the computing at least closer to where this data actually gets generated. So something like that. Funny enough, there is actually term fog computing, which I think means like a cloud, but smaller cloud on the edge of the cloud.
Like
so something like
on the ground kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of more like a marketing term, I think. But why I was making fun that edge computing arrives, because as anyone who has been in IT for a long time, like myself, we all know that everything new is old actually, and edge computing concept takes, I think, roots in the good old CDN. It was a content distributed networks or something. So if you're old enough, you have heard the term before. It's, I think, 90s or so when it first kind of started. So yes, the same old concept with a new name. But I think it might be interesting in terms of maybe potential integration with SAP systems. So I think if you're a developer, it's probably something that if you haven't heard about it, I think you definitely should hear and maybe just read a couple of basic articles. So yeah, so that's all for me. Edgar and Tatiana, anyone, any thoughts on this?
Yes, once again, from my side, by the time that I was trying to learn to code in ABAP, it was definitely difficult because at that point, every time I heard about SAP, for me it was just like an ERP system, right? But I mean, as an outsider, and it was like, yeah, ERP, and we know what that does and everything, but you don't really get to understand how deep it can go in business processes and getting all of this data until you are actually there, right?
Yeah.
So at that time it was difficult, and I had some luck because some of my teammates, they had some of these books and then they shared some, and I started practicing. But definitely when I tried to teach somebody else, it was like super difficult because there was no environments available at that time. It was like 10 years ago or something. So it was really, really difficult. So what I'm thinking is maybe there's these cloud environments now, right? Like these cloud IDEs, and not really speaking about Application Studio, but rather, for example, these runtimes, for example, for Flutter, where you have like everything there, and it's already running. By the time that you enter some code, you can see it compiling and even seeing the output. So I think that would be a nice solution for that. If we got to run it, right? Like this runtime environment, and then start executing the code as such and seeing the results as easy as that, then it would be a huge breakthrough, I think, because it would be so easy to access and start using it, right? And maybe some documentation along with it, that would also be helpful.
Yeah.
Some ChatGPT there that gives you some code hints.
It's funny. It's funny that kind of wider community, and Lars Wem Peterson, he's one of the people who is probably the only person maybe who are really trying to do more like ABAP outside of ABAP application server. Some of the projects that he's been working on, they do not require like anything. You can execute ABAP code just outside of any of SAP environment. I think that's really terrific for learners. Like exorcisms, it's one of the platforms where ABAP exercises can be done already, but you will not find this information easily available. It's also because it's not official SAP. It's not advertised by SAP either. So I was curious. That's why I ran those searches. It does not even come up closer to your like first 2 pages of search results, because no one is out there marketing and promoting it. And I think that's important for everyone to know it. So maybe SAP can lend a hand and maybe help Lars and bigger community to promote those environments that are open for everyone. So there is hoping, fingers crossed, someone.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. All right, so that's all for our viewers, and we will continue off the record here. But for others, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.